Wednesday, 4th of October, stock market update time. And is it going to get any better? Well, as I've said before, still everything very expensive. Those are price earnings ratios over there. Energy is cheap. Insurance is cheap and banks are cheap. And those are just about the only ones on the conventional measure of share price compared to profitability. Remember, throughout this update, I'm going to be looking across the bellwether stocks based on valuation, revenue growth, cash return on capital invested, momentum, Sortino, which is measure of average return versus the risk of missing it, and Alpha, the ability to outperform the market, amongst a bunch of other factors. Now, the reason we do all of that is because we want to tick every single box, and we don't just want to look at one or two things. Performance over the past week, well, the semiconductors and communications companies didn't do too badly. So some of the tech companies essentially didn't do too badly, but not much else. So October starting off a little bit mixed. Not a good start into October, or strong start at least. Berkshire, Warren Buffett's company, just about the only one which is undervalued on a price earnings growth basis. That's price earnings growth. That's what we're looking at on that screen there. And how about how we are doing so far this year? Well, the Nasdaq's up 33%. You might think, wow, that's amazing. Most of that came up until July, where it was up 44%. Since then, we've been drifting lower, but we're going to still try and individually pick in stocks, and I'm going to come across those in just one second. The S&P is up 10%. Now, those who were on my Great Investments program saw if they were Nasdaq heavy, and they pick the stocks themselves from the monthly updated list that they hold for 12 months, they've seen some of their pensions rise 100% if they were Nasdaq heavy, and rise 20%, 30% in the case of S&P heavy picks. So it's not been too bad for them. And now we've got the second half of the year, the more difficult part of the year. And let's look at what's happening over here. So you can see we're on a downward trend with the S&P 500. That's very clear. We're on the lower boundary of that. When I look at the momentum indicators, we might, if we look at the stochastic, which tends to be a bit more sensitive, the weekly stochastic might get a bit of a bounce up, and you can see how that happens over here and over there in the past. But the weekly MACD, which is more pressurizing in terms of headwinds, is definitely pointing lower. Now, as long as the monthly MACD, which is that blue dotted line, doesn't cross below its own signal line, that's the yellow dotted line there, we're okay. And at the moment, it's sort of getting close. So if you're risk averse, I could see how you might say, well, wait a minute, this all looks a bit like how it looked back in this period is what it looks like now. So surely we're going to get a replay of that, which is the market does make a little bit of a bounce up. Here we go, what you might call a bear market rally before it actually drops, as it did there. Well, we'll see. Let's see what happens on Friday. But for the moment, it's still, we wait. Now, I've mentioned time and time again, bearish on the FTSE, and I am being proven right. Okay, and I expect this to fall. So that's where we are with that. How about Apple? Has it got a base? Yes, it's got a base for now. If you put a gun to my head, and it's a good way of sort of explaining these things, then I would definitely wait. I'm not selling it yet, though if you're risk averse, you may well sell, but I try not to trade my investments. And whilst I do look at that, and I do look at this, I say to myself, well, we're at that base. Yes, this is looking now dangerous, a bit like it did here. And the last time it did that, well, as you can see, it breaks below the base and then drops. Now, of course, it does rebound back up again and drops again. So we're going to keep a very close eye on it, of course. But the worry is it is replicating this. And we've seen it all before, and that worries us. So is it going to be that? But if we're lucky, it might be more like this, in which case we just continue getting a bound up. Let's just see what happens on Friday's broadcast. Don't forget my Telegram channel, my YouTube, and my TikTok. I broadcast all this, and on my LinkedIn. Don't forget to follow me on there to get exclusive content. Return potential, say the analysts, still very much to the upside. They think that's where it can go. Alphabet. So I continue holding this, as with Apple, continue holding it. But again, you can see the analysis I'm doing. I'm just making sure we're not getting into that scenario, and rather we are more in that scenario. Now, this is scenario, let's call it bull, and we'll call this scenario, doesn't help, does it, bear. Okay, so what we're hoping for is that this as with this chart and all the others, will turn out more like this, and you'll be able to see it on Friday. But for the moment, I continue, well, as all these people are saying, hold and buy. So I continue holding. Would I buy more today? No. If you put a gun to my head, I'd want a dollar cost average over the next 4 months if you actually said, I've got to buy it. Okay, but am I selling? No, I'm not selling yet. Okay, Microsoft, similar to what we saw earlier with the other charts, you can see the situation, the scenario, and what we're looking at. Okay, is this that or is it that? All right, it's as simple as that. And we don't know yet. Now, if you're risk averse and you like trading your investments, you might get out. But the downside risk of that is this is a base and it continues higher. I don't think we're getting any strong, massive rally as things stand, but I continue holding. Put a gun to my head and I would dollar cost average in over the next 3 or 4 months. But for the moment, just holding. This has given back some of its profits. That's falling. This is still sideways, so it's not too negative. But again, would I buy, hold, or sell? I would hold. If you put a gun to my head, I would buy and dollar cost average over the next 3 to 4 months. Would I sell? Not yet. Okay, so there we go. Look at Disney. I've said it and said it again, time and time again. It's at those levels. Is it going to do that? Too early to tell. So we'll just keep an eye on it. But it's instructive because it's a bellwether, and that's why I want to talk about it. And it, by the way, it rarely goes up in October either. So it certainly would not be buying, even though the analysts think there's lots of upside. Similarly with NVIDIA, so where we are, if you're risk averse, you would have sold. And what if you're risk loving? Well, if you're risk loving, you might buy, but you might want to dollar cost average that over a few months to buy because you're buying at relatively high levels, and that's overbought and probably going to go lower. That's probably going to go lower. So most people would probably want to wait. But if you can't be bothered waiting, then dollar cost averaging is the best way in to something as expensive as that. Analysts think that it can go from its current level. If it gets to the average of what the analysts think, then you'll get a 47% return. They're usually wrong. Now, this is in that direction. Will take time. It's on a support. So for now, even though October tends not to be a good month, and we bought this as a special situation. If you're on my Great Investments program, you know what I'm talking about. Special situation in January. So that continues to be held just as that. Okay. Now, that's down, but this is still technically rising in actual fact, oddly enough. And so probably going to go sideways because you've got two conflicting directions. You've got this down, you've got this going up for now. We'll see who wins, but that suggests hold. Now, all of these banks are saying buy, but I'm just saying you'd hold. If you haven't already bought it and you really put a gun to my head, I'd dollar cost average in over the next 4 months. But otherwise, I'd wait until Friday's broadcast and I wouldn't be selling right now. But we'll see what happens on Friday. Now, you know I like ServiceNow. I'm disappointed it's been falling a bit. And that's the worry that goes lower, but it's still sideways. So for now, same advice as all the others, really, that I've already mentioned. And similarly with Cisco, we have exactly the same advice that I gave for the other stocks there. Please have a look at the campaignfor1million.com. If you want to understand why some of the people who've been following the way in which I do things have got 100% return in their pensions in the first half of this year, then have a look at the campaignfor1million.com. Have a look at the Great Investments program. And I look forward to speaking to you all then. So thank you very much. And also have a look at my Telegram channel. There are various events coming up at which I'll be speaking, and you'll get invites to those if you have a look there. Thank you. Are you still here?